Hey everybody, it's Michael James Smith here. Seems a bit strange saying hey everybody considering I've only got a dozen or so subscribers, but what the hell. Today we are going to have a look at painting grass. Now, it's a pretty important thing to learn to paint if you're going to be painting any type of landscape at all. So I'm going to walk you through it here. My video has stopped. There we go. Start it again. You twat. We start with the blocked in stage. I'm going to first, using a fan brush, I'm going to be painting the shaded areas over the blocked in portion of the painting. And the colours I'm using are ivory black, sap green, and it's actually quite runny. I'm using a lot of liquid, so you can actually see through the paint. It's quite transparent. And we're just going to go over pretty much the whole area. There's no real, we're not being that careful. We're just putting the paint on roughly where it's supposed to be. One of the things I do want to say is it's important not to go too overboard with this, because it's quite easy to darken it a little bit, and then you go a bit darker and you go a bit darker again, and eventually you're left with something that is almost impossible to bring back to life again. So you just want to be putting these darker colours in areas where there is obvious shade in the photograph. So once that's done, we're going to start putting the lighter colours over the top here. We're just using a rigger brush and we're almost drawing the paint on. I think the key thing here is randomness. You don't want all the blades to be pointing in the same direction. This isn't a manicured lawn. This is some edge of a meadow by a river or a lake. So you just you don't want to be too precise with it. We're using a slightly more opaque colour here, which is going to sit on top of the more transparent darks that we've just put in, and that's really going to help the leaves, it's really going to help the blades of grass stand forward. Once again, there's a bit of liquid used in this, but nowhere near as much as when we did the shading, because we'd want this to be a little bit more punchy and to stand forward. Stand forward? I don't even know what stand forward means. Stand out is probably a better word. Let's use that. And we're just going to continue to build up over the whole area. Obviously, it's important to bear in mind that as the grass is further away, sounds obvious, but you want to be using smaller brush strokes. You're keeping the randomness, but they are small. And as you come into the foreground, as you can see, the blades of grass are bigger, and that gives you the feeling of more of depth. This step might seem a little bit strange. We just spent the last hour or so adding highlights, but now we're going to pick up a few sort of darker blades of grass, and it probably doesn't seem as if it's going to do a great deal, but when it's finished, you really will see that it's added a new dimension to it. And it's all these tiny little touches that seem to take an awful long time, but really do make it look realistic. And you can keep going over and over and over it and adding more blades, and the more realistic you want it, the more time you're going to spend on it. But you know, we're trying to get this to look as real as possible in the quickest time possible. So we just keep building it up, and also we want to be careful that we're not going too mad with this dark, because we don't want to undo all of the work we've done. We're just trying to give it a little bit more depth. We're certainly starting to get somewhere with this. It's beginning to look like grass, which is a good thing, but there's still plenty of work to do yet. But we're just going to go over probably the majority of it, especially the foreground, with these darker blades here. It's less important with the grass at the edge of the riverbank there, because as the grass does recede into the distance, you do see less details anyway. So you're not going to pick up on some of these darker areas. It's going to look flatter. There's no doubt about it. It will look flatter. So you don't need to worry too much about that. Most of the work you're doing is going to be middle to foreground. Another reason not to go too dark on that first stage, where you're using the fan brush and putting darker colours in, is you can actually pick bits out to darken up later, as you can see I'm doing here. It's not terribly time consuming, and actually it's quite effective. And once again, it's just, you know, you're just colouring in. That's all you're doing, using the same brush, the rigger brush, and you're just colouring it in. It is quite effective, but you're only going to want to do this in the very foreground, just to give you that added depth. In the video here, it does look as if those dark shades that I'm drawing in there are, well, it looks as if I'm using black, but I'm not. I'm using black mixed with I think the sap green, and there's probably even some cadmium lemon in that. So it's not black. It looks darker on the video than it actually is. That's not to say you can't use black, but I rarely use black neat straight from the tube. In fact, I think the only time I really do it is when I sign my name, because you just don't get that black in nature. You get near to it, but you don't get pure black. So just bear that in mind. We're going to keep building it up now. putting on lighter greens, you're probably looking at sap green. You've got a little bit more cadmium lemon in here, and probably a bit more white as well. And that really does help to give it some pop. You don't want too much white, 'cause you don't want it to look too chalky, but just a little bit extra. And then as we go on here, we're adding highlights. You know how you get it when the sun is shining on it, and perhaps there's, you know, the grass is it's a little bit damp, and you get just these tiny little flecks of white. And it's just little things like that that pull it out, give it that pop, and it just really does help make it look real. It's really, really important. I can't emphasize just enough how the tiny little details help to give it that realism. And it's not neat white, I've got to say. I'm using titanium white, and there's just a touch of yellow cadmium medium in there, just a touch. But you're not doing full blades here, you're literally just doing tiny little blips, because that's what you're going to get. Just that light shining just on the top of the blade of grass there. And that really does make it look effective. Just throwing on a few more darker areas there, because what you've got to remember is this is just, well, you know, you're going to have sticks, you're going to have twigs, you're going to have dead leaves. You know, this is, you don't want it to look too neat and orderly. So, you know, side of the river, you get all sorts of crap, don't you, in the grass. You'll be stepping over and what have you. So, you know, be sure to put all that in as well, because you've got so many different colours in there. As you can see, it's just, you've got bits of dead grass and all sorts of things. So, you know, throw it all in. It does help. And in fact, you know, I'm putting in some bluebells here as well, just to give it something else, just to finish it off. But it is looking good, I think. I think you'll agree. It's looking pretty good, and there's no reason why you can't do this too. So we just put those in. We're going to add a little bit of detail on that. But essentially, that's pretty much it. I think we're pretty much done there. And I hope this lesson has been helpful to you. And if you've enjoyed it, please subscribe. I'm going to release a new video every Friday, I think, or certainly every weekend. So, yeah, thanks for watching. And we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.